So we are now in open session, and we will begin with a presentation on non-bargaining compensation classification from Stephanie Nuttall.
Thank you, councilors. Just to make sure that the record is clear, because we all know this, but my position is part of this non-bargaining compensation and classification adjustment presentation, so there is technically a conflict of interest in my discussion. I'm here to answer questions, help present the task force's recommendation, and provide you with whatever information there is. I know we all know that, I just wanted to make sure that we put that out there on the record, that my position is included here. Our subject today is about adjusting the non-bargaining employee compensation and classification based on external market analysis and internal pay equity. I know we've all been here a number of times to discuss this, so I'm going to gloss over all the background information. Just remind council that it supports council's goals of fiscal stability by balancing the financial health and long-term sustainability with the need to recruit and retain quality employees and comply with Oregon pay equity law. So the recommendation, an overview of the recommendation that did come out of the task force that council assembled to review this. Parts of this were not part of the task force's charge, and I'll mention those, but the task force recommends that it take effect July 1st of 2025. The recommendation has always included reclassifying positions. Initially, there were 3 positions for which reclassification was sought. During the budget process, 2 additional positions were added to that. So we would be talking about reclassifying 5 positions here. Revising the vacation accrual rates and caps, that was not part of the task force's charge. Revising the holiday compensation, again, not part of the task force's charge. Adopting a longevity incentive, that is part of the task force's recommendation. Revising the salary schedule, which is part of the task force's recommendation, and adopting the placement methodology for placement on that salary schedule, and that was part of the task force's recommendation as well. And I'm going to talk about each one of those individually as we go through this. So the effective date, the recommendation from the task force is July 1st of 2025. Part of the basis for this is that market adjustments typically occur for non-bargaining with the fiscal year, so that would make sense to have it effective there. I know that the initial request had been to have it start, I believe, in March, April, May. As it kind of progressed, when the task force started looking at it, they settled on July 1st and are recommending a July 1st date, which would make it retroactive. The reclassifications, you've been provided with the job descriptions for these positions. The GIS supervisor, it's currently a GIS coordinator position. It would become a GIS supervisor position. This position, the coordinator position is currently vacant. They're waiting to get this taken care of. This was one that was addressed as part of the budget. So it was budgeted in the public works budget. The same is true of the water distribution supervisor. That one was also part of the budget process. It was added at that time. The other 3 are the ones that we've been talking about since, I believe, February. Utility billing manager, information technology director, and chief financial officer. These actually do have employees associated with them that would be shifted into those new wage bands with the reclassification. Excuse me. The basis for this is to reflect the actual scope of duties and responsibilities performed by individuals in the positions. The consultant part of what she looked at was those responsibilities, and in doing so was determined that the tasks that are being performed by the individuals in these jobs are actually working at higher levels, and so the reclassification would be appropriate. In addition, it would place those positions with comparable positions on the salary schedule. So we grouped together all of the comparable positions. With vacation accruals, and I know this was a question from our last workshop, the recommendation is to increase the maximum vacation accrual from 200 hours to 370 hours. This is based on the consultant's findings that the non-represented average executive maximum accrual is 370, so it would put us at the average accruals for non-represented executive management. What she also found is that the represented accruals actually capped out at 455. But that seemed a little excessive, so the average is what's being recommended here, the 370. The accruals also, the recommendation is to increase the executive accrual rates for individuals in their positions 0 to 35 months from 4.62 to 5.54 hours per pay period, and for those with more than 36 months from 6.16 to 7.39. And what this would do is match IAFF on accrual rates and remove the differences between police and fire manager, supervisor, and the supervisory executive. So it would be the idea is to make things consistent across the board and to reflect both internal and external averages. Holiday compensation was another part of the original recommendation, and I didn't have that information for you 2 weeks ago. The recommendation is to revise the holiday compensation for police and exempt to match the confidential compensation, and that would be 11 holidays and 2 personal holidays per year. The basis for this is that currently the police executive, managerial, and supervisory, they receive 12 holidays a year but no personal holiday. Exempt receives 11 holidays and 1 personal holiday, and confidential receive 11 holidays and 2 personal holidays. So it would make them all consistent with the 11 holidays and 2 personal holidays. Longevity incentive, the recommendation is 1% of base wages for city employment of 10 or more years, and 2% of base wages for city employment of 15 or more years, and that's not doesn't build on each other. So it's just that flat 2% after 2 years. It's not 1% plus 2%. The basis for this is to, A, recognize long-term commitment to the city, but also non-bargaining is the only group that does not have this. All the other bargaining units have this longevity incentive. The next part of the recommendation is to adopt the salary schedule. It would place market average at step 6 and have 4% between steps up to step 6 and then 2% between steps after step 6. The task force took the consultant's original recommendation and changed that 2%, or that steps after step 6 to 2%. It was previously 4. And they're also recommending to add the 2024 CPIU of 3.02% to the actual salary schedule itself for the 2025 market adjustment. And this would be done pre-placement, which means we're not giving all of the employees a 3.02% COLA, we're giving the salary schedule a 3.02% COLA and then placing employees on it based on the methodology. And the basis for this salary schedule is competitive wages in the external market necessary for retention and recruitment. The last component of the recommendation is the placement methodology, and we've talked about this before. The recommendation is to place individuals on the grid based on the hire of 3 years of substantially similar experience equaling 1 step. And of note is that the state of Oregon, their placements are based on 2 years equaling 1 step, not 3. And that if that does not result in them being placed at a position where they make more, where they get a pay increase of any kind, if it would be a pay decrease, we would have to actually put them on the step closest to current base wages without a decrease. That is by Oregon law. And then from there, we would make any adjustments necessary to ensure pay equity. The basis for this is internal equity among employees based on experience, and that's when we place the initial employees on there, we would eliminate our any pay equity issues that may or may not be there. But it would also establish a system for initial placement that would meet the requirements moving forward for Oregon pay equity. So going forward, it would apply to new hires and it would apply to our promotions where we would be able to make sure that we are meeting what pay equity law requires. The cost, it is already budgeted just shy of $1.3 million. That was factored into the fiscal year 25-26 budget. It was based on that May 21st proposal, which included 51 FTE. The current recommendation would cost $1,224,914. $286,000 of that would be from the general fund. So about $250,000 less than the proposal from May. That position does include 4 vacant and unfilled positions. So there are currently 2 positions that are vacant. By approving the reclassifications, we would add the additional 2 to make it a total of 53 FTE. So 53 FTE for $250,000 less than what was previously brought forward. As requested, we do have the 5-year projection of what this would look like. It is based on assumptions after the first fiscal year that there would be a 3% CPIU each year. No inflation to benefits, although there historically are regular increases. We can't project those. We don't know what those would be. It would also include pay equity freezes for certain employees in the first 3 years. So if you get placed based on your wages and the rubric says that you should have been placed lower, your salary would be frozen until you're caught up to that. You wouldn't get your step increases. You would still get any cost of living adjustments applied to the grid. And it also assumes that all positions are filled, which we know is not the case because we're now in October, and we have positions that have been open throughout the 25-26 fiscal year, and it will take time to hire for some other positions. So with that, what we're recommending is to move this to the council action. I can be prepared for this on Wednesday night if council wishes, or we can move it to another meeting if you desire, to bring forward those recommendations, the July 1st effective date, the reclassifications, revisions to vacation accruals, revision to holiday compensation, the longevity incentive, new salary schedule and placement methodology. Your alternatives are to not move forward for council action or to provide further direction to staff. And with that, I will turn it over for questions.
Eric?
On slide 11 there, just wanted to make sure that that does not include the 12 FTE that we approved for the fire department and the police department, correct?
Those are not non-bargaining employees, so it would not include them.
Thank you.
Kathleen?
So when I was looking at the comparisons with other cities, I noticed that we were the only city that gave a longevity incentive. Would that not be included in a yearly wage increase?
Not necessarily. I mean, to some extent it is. There's overlap between it. But the discussion that we had with the task force is that the steps are based on experience, longevity is based on time with the city. So we have a number of employees where they've done a number of different jobs with the city. It may not translate into their experience, but they would still qualify for the longevity incentive because of how long they've been here.
Other questions? Seth?
On the vacation accruals, you said per pay period. Is that monthly or biweekly?
Biweekly.
Is there no other, Rob?
So on a couple things. So on vacation accruals, the reason for the recommendation to increase that is just essentially essentially for internal equity. Is that correct, to balance with the unions?
On the executive accrual rate, yes, it would be for internal equity on vacation accruals.
I mean, a legitimate case is made by many HR educated people that vacation should be use it or lose it. There shouldn't be any accruals at all. That way people are forced to use their vacation. The entity then gets back a refreshed, happy employee every year rather than accruing. So that's really a philosophical perspective, whether or not it should be use it or lose it. And to me, well, anyway, we're not discussing now, but we're just asking. So that's basically just to balance, essentially to balance with what the unions are, or getting closer to the unions.
On the executive accrual rates, yes. I think the cap is an external comparator. The accrual rates is an internal comparator, if that makes sense.
When you say the cap, what do you mean the cap?
So your maximum number of hours you can have is currently 200. The recommendation includes moving to 370, and I believe that's based on an external analysis that the consultant did. The accrual rate, that 5.54 hours per pay period or 7.39, is an internal compared to the bargaining units. So we've got both an external and internal component here.
Okay, so I'm going to, I guess, ask a question that I asked at the last task force meeting, and no one seemed to have the answer. With regards to position of city manager, we've got, I guess, our current manager is roughly in the ballpark of external comparators, within a few $1,000s at the 194 or whatever. And the question I had was that no one was able to answer. Do other managers, are they also on some kind of step plan, or is each manager got their own individual contract with cities?
My understanding is that there's some of each. So it really depends on the city, how they handle it, whether it's a contract annual discussion or whether there's a step process to it.
So I guess I can turn this into a question. It's as much discussion as anything else, but what would be required to separate out our city manager, because I think that there is basis for this, but from this so-called non-bargaining group, this group, because our city manager has a unique situation. I mean, it's a mix and match pay situation. He's got benefits, or this position, the person who holds this position now has benefits that none of the other senior staff have, and I can list some of them out, but right now it's a mix and match situation. So to me, I don't necessarily see that position as being appropriate for being included in this group, and I guess you know, and the manager has the ability to, unlike any other employee, write their contract. You know, they have a say in what their contract is. No other employee has that, and I can go down the list. But so to me, why is it that this? Why is it appropriate to have the manager involved with this group? Because they've got their ability to. They've got their own contract that they had to agree to.
That was a decision that council made. I'm not sure when that was done. My understanding is it was by a resolution that council added the city manager to the non-bargaining pay structure. I'm assuming that would be the same process for reversing that.
Other questions? Indra?
So on these reclassifications, we have employees currently in other named positions that are going to move into that?
So essentially, currently I'll use, and JC, forgive me on this one, I'm going to use the finance director. We currently have a finance director. In reviewing job duties, it is more in the line of what would be typically called a chief financial officer. He's doing the duties already. It's just, it would be creating a new job description and putting him in that job description to reflect what the actual role entails.
Okay, so it seems like a lot of these reclassifications are where the big bumps and raises come from. So taking that example that you give, the finance director at 10, year 10 is 148.8. But then if we change it to chief financial officer and reclassify, it's 205. I mean, that's substantial. Is that what we're looking at doing with these employees?
Yes. That would be the numbers that are market average and competitive in the market for those positions.
And same as IT. Do we have someone, so in the current grid, it's the top 10, at 10 is 117.7, and they would be the new...
It's an IT manager that would be reclassified to IT director.
IT director making 185.4. So that's what we're taking these positions, renaming them, and giving them tens of thousands of dollars.
Reflecting the roles that they're actually playing, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Rob?
The IT director that Indra just mentioned, so that position, that is not a position that is likely or even able to go out and form or join a union. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what the rules are on who can and cannot unionize.
Okay.
I know in a previous job that I had, all of the directors and department heads were in a union, so it is.
They were or were not?
They had their own union. But
Okay.
that was in Minnesota, so I'm not sure what the rules are here.
Yeah, and getting back to that question I asked before, when you said that you thought there was a resolution that at some point that the manager position became part of the non-bargaining pay structure, but the manager position has many more benefits and incentives and so forth than the rest of the so they never actually joined the non-bargaining pay structure. They just kind of took what was, or that the resolution just created an additional bonus for the manager, because the manager had their own baseline and then added more. It wasn't that they are now part of the non-bargaining pay structure. They have that plus.
It put them on the salary schedule. So they have there's a contract that has all the other stuff, and it placed them on the salary schedule. So it's not the entire compensation package,
Right.
but just the salary schedule
So
itself.
salary schedule plus the rest of the compensation.
Plus,
Thank you.
yep.
Right, thank you.
Kathleen?
So I guess I just wanted to highlight what the concern is here from the council in making these decisions, is that it appeared, correct me if I'm wrong, that to adjust the main pay equity problems would be for 7 employees with a $34,000 annual takeaway from the general fund. But if all 51 positions were adjusted, it'd be $286,000 annually from the general fund.
Yes, I believe that those numbers are correct.
All right, so go ahead, Joel.
We're moving ahead, and geez, I appreciate the work you've done, lady. And the task force, I appreciate the work they've done. And even before that, there's been a lot of work and thought put into this. So as we move ahead, my question is alternatives. One alternative is to accept the task force recommendation along with the work that you have done to make sure that we don't have any equity problems. Another alternative, and my question is going to be, are these alternatives viable? The first one obviously is viable. The second alternative is, it seems like, given the size of the increase, that we might say that the first year's cost of living for the non-union is already taken care of, and so that we wouldn't have any the first year as an alternative. Let me give you all the alternatives, and then you can
All right.
tell me if they're feasible or not.
I'm going to get a pen and write them down.
Okay.
Okay, so no additional cost of living, just,
For this year.
Correct.
Because of the change in the increase in salary that's occurring. Third alternative is to have a phased implementation of 3 years. And these are not all I don't want to take credit for all these ideas, though I would like to, but I can't. But anyway, so that you would do this over 3 years, like the consultant said, rather than 1 year. The second is the third alternative would be to adjust the steps and experience and change the bona fide criteria. And of where the step and placement would be. It's a fancy word. I had to look that up in the dictionary. And then probably the most austere step would be just to give everybody a cost of living and keep the schedule the same and fix the 7 positions or whatever where there's obvious inequity. Are those alternatives feasible?
yep. Let me address each one of those.
Okay.
So with the no additional COLA for this year, I think that was actually assumed in what's being presented, that the that 3.02% COLA would be applied to the grid, not to employees. So if you look at the numbers that were provided, some employees, based on how this would play out, actually would receive an increase lower than the CPI COLA for the 25-26 fiscal year.
Could I interrupt you? The intent of that alternative was to not increase the schedule by cost of living this year.
Okay, we can do that. We could just leave it as is. It doesn't, as far as the employees themselves, it doesn't come out too much in the dollar amount at the end of the day. But where it would cause potential issues is that then we're a year behind market, because the market numbers were based on 2024, and so by the time we got to July 1st, 2025, we are a year behind on the data. So the reason why the task force was recommending that 3.02% COLA is to keep the grid as close to market, so we don't have to do this again. We can prolong how long before we come back and do this.
Yeah, I understand the rationale.
So that's the reason for that. It actually, in some cases, resulted in employees being placed at lower steps on the grid, and I think there were a couple where it was slightly lower. As far as the phased implementation, I had anticipated that scenario.
Good for you.
I have two potential options for you if that's what you want to consider. They would both be based on capping the base wage increase, because that's the easiest to track and that's the safest when it comes to pay equity analysis. So essentially you would place the employees on the step where they should be, and then you would, if they're over whatever percentage cap we set, we move them back until they're below that cap. If we can, pay equity. There are some places where pay equity would not allow for that, but you move them back if you can, till they're just below that threshold. And then in the subsequent year, you move them up X number of steps. In the case of a 10% cap, it would be, you move them up another 2 steps, if that's how many they have to go before they catch up. And with a 15%, it would be 3 steps. With a 10% cap, we could do that it would be a 3-year process to get everybody back up to where they should be, and they would still get their annual step increases. These would be market adjustments that would happen on July 1st. So with a 15% cap, we would be caught back up by the end of the 2nd fiscal year. Yeah, it would be July 1st of 2028 would be when the rest of them would take place. So that 29 fiscal year. And let me pull those numbers up. So assuming that a 3% annual COLA is applied, the 15% cap would put us with these numbers. I'll give you a minute. So I believe that the 15% cap would impact, I think it's 15 employees. The 10% cap, it impacts, I believe, 28 employees. And that would be the 10%. So your general fund and your total cost at the end are, you get to the same point. It's just how quickly do you get there? Where do you see the increases? And then on the last, or then adjusting steps, XP, changing those bona fide factors, you could do that. It will make recruitment harder, because if you know you have to have that many years of experience to get there and you're coming in much lower, you're going to look at going a different job. But it is an option, as well as giving individuals a COLA now, fixing any potential pay equity issues, and keeping with the same structure. That's always an option, but you're just putting more Band-Aids on the dike. It's not gonna we're gonna have issues going forward if we continue to do that.
Okay.
So they're all viable, but they have pros and cons.
The last option that I gave you, you didn't write it down, which is okay, because I can only remember
Okay.
4 things. So you got to remember 5. That is to not readjust the schedule except where needed for the obvious differences, those positions that you gave us, and then do a cost of living adjustment.
And that's the one I just finished up with, is you can do that. It's not going to fix any inherent issues that we might have, but you can choose to do that. Keep status quo with a COLA and address issues as they come up. It's just it's putting Band-Aids on.
Sure, but we would have to adjust those positions where there's some obvious,
Correct.
right,
Yep, we can do it that way. It's just not going to solve the underlying issues.
okay, thank you.
Rick and then Indra?
Stephanie, on slide 12. When it shows the general fund for 25, 26, it's already been stated that's already within the budget.
Correct.
So when we look at 29, 30, is there any projection that the general fund would have that money available just due to the natural progression for the future? Are we able to forecast?
I mean, same thing goes with this. You're only as good as your assumptions. So we could forecast, and again, I would probably, for a long-term one like this, use a similar 3% growth rate. But I would say right now our CPI is trending at like 2.65 or something, which is slightly less than 3. Information changes on the daily, so tomorrow that projection may not equate to the exact same thing.
So when you state the unknown and you look at 29, 30, are you seriously concerned about that amount, or you think it's possible? I realize that's shooting from the hip, but
I mean, I think I say this at every bargaining when we have it in an open session. Any negotiations gives me a little bit of heart palpitation because it is an increased cost over time. So it makes my job a lot easier when we keep things flat. And so, yes, when it comes to the general fund, any raises by any employees, any addition of FTEs is an unknown variable that is harder and harder to keep up with the demand.
okay, thank you.
So Joel had a quick response and then Indra.
Yeah, and this is just for the non-bargaining unit. You also have increases to the general fund personnel costs from the others. So the average increase in personnel costs to the general fund, like that spreadsheet I sent you, was about, depends on the year, but it can be anywhere from 1 million. Last year with this, it was like 3 million. So it's not just this increase that affects, you have to look at the bigger picture.
Go ahead. Oh, you're. All right, any other questions? All right, seeing as I don't see any other questions, we will move on to general discussion. Is there anybody who would like to begin with that? Joel?
I'm talking too much, I apologize. I'll try to do more listening and less talking after I just have 2 comments right now. The vacation accrual should stay, I believe, where it's at. Vacations are there, like Rob talked about, where you want employees to take vacations. It's a good fringe benefit. You don't want them to save up a bunch of vacation and be gone for a long period of time. That can be detrimental to the goals of the organization. But you also want the employee to take vacation and come back refreshed, and it's just good management that when I see somebody working overtime, like Stephanie was emailing me on Sunday, bless your heart. I said, man, what are you doing working on Sunday? And I know you had to because of where we were at and what was going on. But we need to have a policy that encourages people to take annual leave and not accrue it. The other thing is, I come from an organizational background where top managers were encouraged to move, and the lower staff was encouraged to stay. And you had technicians that knew the ground, they knew what to do, they knew the operational stuff, they knew what to do if they went on a fire, they knew what to do if prepare a timber sale. The top folks that dealt with the city councils and the mayors and the senators and that kind of thing. You wanted that turnover because they would get fresh input into it. And so these longevity things, I think it sets us up personally for a lot of turnover at the same time. And we can survive that. That's not a big deal, but it's not desirable. And so the longevity for upper management, I'm not sure that, well, I do know personally, I don't think that it's a good policy. And it just comes from my organizational background and doesn't mean that it doesn't come without costs or whatever, having a change, because every change produces conflict. But I don't want us to set us up for everybody to leave at the same time either. So anyway, that's with all due respect, because people are doing a good job.
Rob?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joel. I know that with regards to retention, a retention case can definitely be made if top staff does turn over, because the people underneath them know that there's no chance they're going to get the top position if the top person is going to stay forever. So, if you got some, younger person, maybe with a family coming up and knows that the top position here is basically blocking them from promotion, they could just as easily go somewhere else. So you can make a case for retention by not having I think a legitimate case for retention of, we'll say, some of the middle level employees if the top does turn over more often. And I think after someone's been here, 5 or 10 years, they're probably pretty proficient at their job. And if the person who's been there 15 years leaves, the person who's been there 10 can probably take over. So I would agree on the retention aspect, because again, it's just a question of kind of which argument do you want to make? Is it better to keep people that have been there 15 years, or better to encourage people that have been there 8 or 10 to stay longer because the top may open up for them? And I'm going to get back to the including the city manager position in this group. I mean, to me, I have no idea how this fits in, but currently, because we've got a manager with a mix and match compensation plan, what was it? I think in 16, deferred comp started, and then it got upped again. I think in 19, it went to 8%. So, our manager, again, is getting more than what the other non-bargaining people are receiving as far as pay plan. They've got, of course, severance, which obviously is not pay, but it is peace of mind. I can't really see including the manager in this, with this group, because the manager gets separate benefits that the rest of the group doesn't get. So I just don't understand. In other words, I don't agree with the concept of double dipping, and I look at that as double dipping. So to get the best possible benefit out of the step plan while also getting the best possible benefit out of individual negotiations that the council has agreed to and the manager agreed to. But I look at that as double dipping. You get the best of both worlds. Well, why would we be paying that? I can't think of a legitimate reason. And I am kind of a steward for taxpayer money, and I can't justify that to taxpayers. So I actually would like to see the manager separated from this, the rest of this group for those reasons. As far as and just, I think, rough figures, the way this grid is, if you add 8% to the proposed 6-step on the manager salary here, that's like an extra $16,000 or $17,000, if I'm doing the math correctly. So that it's a whole different ballpark. That whole pay plan for the manager is a whole different thing than anybody else has. So to me, that position should be removed if we're going to move forward with this. And I'm actually not comfortable moving forward with this and having that position included, because I just don't think it's fair. Because again, it's a mix and match from both worlds. As far as phasing this in over 3 years, whatever we decide, if we're going to decide on something of this magnitude, I would definitely agree that it should be probably over 3 years. If we decided on something lower than that, or less lucrative for the employees, then I could see possibly doing it in less than 3 years. but anything close to this scale. And again, getting back to what Indra was saying, you know, I guess on the reclassifications, if I understood correctly, Stephanie, I guess I have a question here. On the GIS supervisor, we now have a GIS coordinator, is that right?
There's a GIS coordinator position. It is currently vacant.
Okay, so who's doing GIS then? Who runs that?
The technicians, and it's supervised by,
Okay. So we don't have a coordinator or a supervisor?
no, the supervisor would be a new position, and it would replace and eliminate the coordinator position. So it would better reflect the job duties that they want to have the GIS head handling.
And how many people are in that department?
Three total in GIS. And so the supervisor will take over the supervision of the department as well as running it. And it's really just bringing it in line with really what I think the position was originally intended to do. And it lowers my direct reports from 11 to 9.
Okay, thank you.
I need to respond to the, Ms. mentioned the double dipping, the compensation associated with the salary schedule and the city manager being associated with the salary schedule all took into consideration the compensation packages of other city managers throughout the state. And yes, there are different type of compensation packages, whether it be a car allowance, an additional deferred compensation or something along those lines. And that was all put into what would be a market rate based on the salary and the salary structures of other city managers throughout the state. And that's represented there in what this was. If you took, say, let's say I had a car allowance at $500 a month, which I don't, that wouldn't technically be salary, but it is technically salary when a compensation study specialist looks at that, and that's all included in the packages. So they look at all the packages from the comparables and what those city managers get and add all those things together to come up with a comparable range, which is what was represented here in the thing. So I just wanted to mention that. I also wanted to mention, since I have the mic, I greatly appreciate council and their willingness to tackle this topic. I know it's extremely difficult. You've got a lot of pressures. We have budget issues. I appreciate you listening to my concerns and the concerns of the department directors and the challenges that we're facing right now with some pay equity issues and or retention and recruitment and those kind of things. And I appreciate the seriousness that you're doing, and it's going to be a tough decision for you to move forward. And I also want to thank the task force for their efforts in making recommendations and taking the time. That was a lot of time and work that you put into that. So thank you.
Okay, Indra and then Rob.
Yeah, there was a question I forgot to ask earlier, and then I have a discussion point, but I think we spoke about how much % of the budget is personnel and us compared to these other comp cities. Do we have that information? And can we get it if we don't? No, you don't have to do it right this second.
He said he can give our cities, but don't know about how he would go about getting the comparables from other cities.
Okay, because we have comparables for all the salaries, I guess that's public, but I would like, I mean, obviously, it's hard to, I'm not a big fan of the comp with the cities because every community is so different. But if we're going to base all our salaries on it, I think we should know, I mean, the revenues are so different between these cities. And so is ours, 60% or more, and theirs is 50. I mean, I think that's something we should know, and a big difference. So if we can get that, I would appreciate it. But here are my concerns. I, as well as many constituents, are shell-shocked by these figures that have come out. And they are so high. Some of these raises are as much as a large percentage of our residents make in a year. just the raise part. And so you're right, this is very tough to look at. And I just want to say thank you so much to the task force for volunteering your time to put this together. It's very helpful and a lot of work. And what I say is in no way reflects any personal or individual position here in the city. I respect and appreciate all of you and the work that you do, but just the magnitude of this and the cost on our city is tremendous. And I don't see this as sustainable. This is just the non-bargaining. And then we also deal with the bargaining that, as we know, goes up high percentages every year. And so at what point, you know, do we give these raises? It'd be great. And then we have to cut positions because we can't afford them down the road. And then we have fewer people, but they're making more money. I mean, I'd rather have more people making average money what people are making around Grants Pass. That's just my own personal feeling. So this is really tough for me to even look at or comprehend just due to the sustainability of it. I am for, at this point, I would not be for going forward with this, and I think we would need to look at those. I'm willing to look at the 7 positions. Pay equity is Oregon law, and so we want to do that. So I would like to look at the 7 positions and see what we need to do specifically to those. I don't really know that we have a retention problem, you know, maybe in the fire and police, yes, but in the non-bargaining because of our salaries scheduled to begin with. But I'd be willing to get us in line legally, and then I would want to look down the road, as I suggested earlier, at what positions are we having trouble, specifically recruiting? Attorney, are we not getting attorneys or because of pay? People aren't coming here so much because of livability, you know, right now, but they will in the future. A lot of people just want to live here and they're willing to take less pay to live in such a beautiful area. That's not taken into consideration in these charts. So I think we retain a lot of people, or people come back home to work in home and are willing to maybe take less. But we do want to be legally on board. I'd be willing to do just what is the minimum to get us legally on board.
I believe Rob is next.
Yeah, a couple things. I guess kind of piggybacking on what Joel and Indra were both saying is that, you know, in a certain sense, we as an entity or as a council don't have really any control over, or very, very little control over when it comes to bargaining, especially with police and fire unions, because arbitrators are going to decide the way they're going to decide for those particular, which is generally not in the most fiscally conservative way, we'll say. What council does have some control over is creating a pay scale that, as Indra was saying, that people who want to live in Southern Oregon or want to live in Grants Pass or Josephine County would be happy to do it for the pay that we're offering. And we do have more control over that than we have over union contracts, for sure. Yes, we have to essentially approve a union contract, police and fire, but we all know that we don't really have a lot of area to bargain there. So we do have some control over what our policy is on having people that want to be here and want to be in this area, what pay we're willing to offer them. So, you know, we have some control over this. Getting back to, you know, Aaron's comment about the manager compensation, the last time I saw from the Dr. McGrath, the comparables on the manager's pay, some had deferred, some didn't have deferred. It was kind of mix and match. But some of the ones that, nonetheless, our manager's position was still very much within range, basically within range, and it wasn't necessarily lower than some of the others because our manager had deferred comp. It is, again, double dipping is not a great term for this, but it is optimizing of two different plans, and I don't feel the need to do that, and I don't feel the impetus to absolutely optimize our manager position pay with both the best of both. And if our manager position pay was far lower than others, which it is not, and the deferred comp brought it up to be in the average range, I would say, okay, well, the deferred comp makes some sense. But our manager pay is not far below others. So this is really a situation that is an inequity, and it is unique for this whole non-bargaining group. No one else in that non-bargaining group has those benefits, and I don't feel moved to maintain those benefits or increase those benefits or increase the pay on those benefits, because I just don't see how it's with external equity comparing it to others, it doesn't add up. And if there's evidence to the contrary, I'm willing to look at it, but when Dr. McGrath showed us the evidence, there was no evidence that our manager was way below and the deferred comp made that equitable. It was actually kind of the opposite.
Joel?
Many times when we discuss things on council, we have our committees speak because they've been working on it, and I wonder if it would be appropriate for the task. We got some couple members of the task force here, if they would be willing to speak and go from there. That might add some clarity for us.
Oh, come ahead, yeah.
It's on. It should be live.
Well, there's a lot of good ideas. Which one am I doing wrong here?
Yeah, if you could pull the mic up.
Oh, sorry. Okay. We as a task force had Dr. McGrath, we had internal lawyers, external lawyers, hopefully some smart people of the outsiders. And now after this period of time, and it's not bad, but here comes idea 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The question is, where do you stop? Because I tell you what, I'm not about ready to be here for 10 more sessions and more and more and more. So all I'd say, we did our very best work. We looked at it hard, and if you accept it, fine. If you don't, that's your call. The other thing I'd say is back to Rob's point. I think the task force looked at the manager thing as kind of a hybrid, and if there is any change, I think that's an entire decision the council should make. We as a task force said that's not within our purview. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I'd like to make a couple of points about the very...
Could you maybe pull the mic a little closer? Thank you.
The council is definitely facing a very difficult decision. And I think it's important to maintain the perspective that the senior management staff manage the budgets that the council adopts. They carry out projects that are useful and relevant to the strategic goals of the council. This is a key group of employees who manage the entire operation. And we should keep in mind that the highest quality, most professional staff are a very important part of our human capital. This is an investment in the infrastructure of our professional managerial employees. And while the costs are significant, that investment will yield dividends in the future. So I do think it's important to keep in mind investing in human capital is as important as investing in physical capital. Council has been discussing a lot of alternatives, and the task force did discuss some of those. I think it might be worth thinking about re-examining the rubric and see if the number of steps for years of experience ought to be revised so that people aren't moved as high on the new salary schedule as is indicated in this proposal. For example, 1 to 3 years of experience, how many steps should that be? That can manage the overall process. In general, I think the study done by Dr. McGrath is relevant and appropriate. And an investment in this group of human capital for the city will yield dividends. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, can I ask you a question? So when you say adjusting the number of years per step, or can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, as a task force, we didn't participate in the development of the method to quantify prior experience and how that would translate into steps. But I think that system is something that could be looked at again and perhaps adjust it in a way that creates less of a fiscal impact while recognizing the importance of prior experience when people are hired. Does that answer? Thank you.
Would you like to, thank you.
Yeah, again, I'd like to thank the opportunity to be on this. I wasn't sure I wanted to do it because of the time it takes, but it was definitely an education for me, coming from the private sector and how the public sector works, which is completely mind-blowing in some ways to me on how I run my business compared to how you guys have to run this. Some things that I love being part of it. I love learning the education, how you guys do things. Obviously, I disagree with some way that things are done. But I think we were tasked with trying to put together something to fix what was broken. The schedule was way out of whack. I think I used the term, the train was off the tracks, and we're trying to get it back on the tracks. The schedule was way out of date. Dr. McGrath proved that by getting it up to our average. Now, like anything, we can take that and apply it, or we can not use it. That's your choice. And wherever we place people, based on your choice as a council, and then people have to accept that. And if they don't accept it, then they make a choice. Do they want to stay here or they want to leave? And again, I totally agree with Tom. You have to invest in, human capital. I get that. I invest in my long-term employees as much as possible. But if I'm at a point where they think the grass is greener and they want to leave, I wish them all the best. I would love to keep them, but I can't hold them back. And if they want to leave and go somewhere else, that's the choice that they'll make that they think is better for them and their family. And so I think what you are tasked with next is taking what we thought would be a good solution to a broken salary schedule, apply it however you want, put people into it, and if they don't like it, they don't like it. And as long as you meet the legal pay equity, and if it's the bare minimum, do the bare minimum. I agree, we can't sustain this, but we had to put something in place to hopefully get the train back on the tracks. It was a little disheartening how our process went. I thought we had a good thing going, and then we had a long break. Nobody's control other than the homeless issue that kind of derailed our thing, and Stephanie got sidetracked with that. But my biggest frustration was I didn't think the task force was independent. I thought we were being led by other people. Some things were said in a couple of our meetings that all of a sudden we had attorneys in the room. And we were told to, quote unquote, stay within the lines, color within the lines of what you're talking about. I didn't like that. We were an independent task force. Granted, I know there's rules you have to follow, but I didn't think that. And then the bombshell that was dropped last workshop about a random idea that came up about the 7 steps that was obviously talked about between most non-bargaining thing, but was relayed to everybody like it was just something that came up that day. The behind-the-scenes stuff, I was frustrated with. So the process was a little muddled, but I thought what we came up with, and I still agree, is a good option for you to consider. And whether you use it or not, again, that's your choice. Thank you.
I had a question for you real quick. Thank you. You had mentioned when you first started talking about how you didn't agree with some of the process. Do you have any recommendations in terms of something that we can use in terms of what you didn't agree with? Can you talk about that? Or
Yeah,
did you
in
already...
my opinion, I thought that information that we were discussing, granted, it's all public record, it's recorded, it's noted, was getting back, and then we were being kind of led by other outside forces, because the next meeting, we were told we needed to have an education on public meeting law. And next thing you know, we had, and granted, this is not against use that direction, I'm sure, to be there, but Stephanie educated us, and then we had a labor attorney come in about pay equity, and all those things were relevant, but I felt like we weren't independent. So I would like to see potentially a task force again in the future be independent. And we come, and if we have questions, we asked a ton of questions. We asked for a lot of material. Some we got, some we didn't get. There was things we were told we couldn't ask, you know? So, and I'll leave it at that. And if we want to have a discussion later on, I'm more than open to answer those outside here.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other points of discussion? Indra?
Yes, I was remiss in a couple other concerns I had. One is that longevity increase. I'm not a big fan of that. I would not want to see that going forward. I mean, that's in addition to cost of living, and you're at the top scale. I think that's above and beyond. And then the vacation accruals increase, I would not be in favor of that. 370 hours is 9.25 weeks. So you could literally accrue over 2 months of vacation. I think that's just way out of line with what normal working people get to have. I would not be for that. Thank you.
So I think, Joel, did you have a discussion item?
I guess it is discussion. We need to move forward,
Or were you wanting to make a motion then, or?
well, I could if people want me to, but I was going to just tell people what I was thinking.
Oh, okay, so discussion, sounds like.
Yeah, and I got some great feedback from folks in the audience and from staff and from other people on the council. It seems to me like as we move forward, I would put this up as a hypothesis that we would not have the cost of living adjustment for this year, and that we would do a 3-year fiscal year implementation over time, because we do need to adjust the things, and we would cap on leave, keep it at 200 hours so that hopefully people use their leave, go fishing, or do whatever they want to do. And then the thing that because I don't know that much about it, is to adjust those steps where they go on the scale with bona fide criteria and experience, and have that be a little more in line with perhaps what the committee was thinking. So that's what I was thinking of our hypothesis.
So Stephanie brought up 2 new options, and I guess I was wondering, I guess this is a question, I could have asked it earlier. Did the task force get to see those things? And I guess that's my question, and then I would ask the task force if they thought that sounded interesting, if they hadn't heard of it before.
At the last meeting, I did state that I had options for if there wanted to be a phase-in, and they indicated that they wanted to stick with their original recommendation.
Reduce it by 3.5%.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that JC has your answers.
And then you would,
Yeah, Councilor Nicholas's question regarding the percentage in the general fund, and I do want to state, I'll go over the city of Grants Pass first, and I'll kind of circle back to something you inherently said about other cities potentially being different and providing different services. So, for the city of Grants Pass in 2025, the general fund was approximately 65% personnel. The entirety of the city was 38%. And again, that's partially because general fund is more people-driven, and so you have some other funds like enterprise funds that are more construction-based and or object-driven.
what year was that again, CJ?
2025, so it's not audited, but we're pretty close as far as being almost done with that audit.
And that was the actual?
That was the actual?
Yeah, the projected was 73. Okay.
Yeah, we underspent.
So we had vacant positions and cost saving.
We underspent the general fund by about $3 million.
Yeah.
And again, we'll go over this when it comes to the year-end report.
So our projected was 73, but our actual was 65?
Correct.
Okay.
And back to my other comment of other cities. So this is my third city to work for in the state of Oregon. All of them had police, all of them had fire, all of them had public works, and they are made up slightly different as to the services they provide, as well as the structure of their organization. And that's policy driven partly, and then it's also just some other factors that come into that. So we can get you those numbers, but I don't know if it'll be a great comparison where the report that McGrath did was actually trying to compare like-to-like positions individually, not necessarily on a department level. So each one of them may have a finance director, but some of them may have 15 finance personnel, some of them may have 10 finance personnel, and some of them may have 12 finance personnel. It doesn't mean they do anything necessarily that much different, they just go about it a different way.
Thank you, CJ.
Okay, I think, Indra, did you have a discussion?
Do you have,
Yeah, sorry about that.
do you have the 2024% and what we're projecting for 2026?
I have the actuals. I don't have the budget in front of me right now, but from 2016, the general fund went from 67% to 2020 is 68% to 2022, 69%. And then now in 2025, we are at 65%. And that's partially due to some of those vacancies that you're talking about, as well as retaining the personnel when adding the public safety utility fee.
So the actual, and maybe I'm repeating what he said, in 23 and 24 were, let me see here. One was in 23, I got to get up to the.
I have 23 at almost 69% and 24 at 66.34%.
Actually, from the budget, I have 65% in 23 and
Joel, do you want to
77%
put
in 22.
your mic wasn't on?
What's that?
Your mic was not on, I don't believe.
Oh, okay. Anyway, it's less than 80%, but it's hovering close to 70 or a little bit above 70, which is kind of that's the point where you want to stay below organizationally, is that 70%.
And I'm just from experience, you could say that 100% of police and fire's budget is personnel driven, even though not 100% is spent on personnel, because you have to have fire trucks, you have to have police vehicles and all the other things that go along with it to provide the services.
And you got to pay the lights.
Do we have a projection? I'm sorry, do we have a projection for next year? And then with this 5-year, almost $3 million increase, do we have a projection up to 5 years?
So JC, based on the budget, which might be different, I just looked at our last budget in the appendix on the general fund, and it has employee costs, and it has total general fund dollars. And that came out at 75% is the percent of personnel costs over the total revenue in 2026, but that was adopted. That was
Yeah,
adopted.
that's projected again versus actuals. You were talking
Right.
actuals before, so actuals
Right.
will be a lower percentage than your projected.
Right,
Because your
but the-
projected is expenditure
Right.
100%. Your actuals, you usually have some kind of savings, so you may project 71% in 1 year, but
Sure.
you'll get around 68 or 65.
Absolutely, and along with that, then you get a lower level of service, especially if it's cops or policemen.
Okay, Rick?
Stephanie, I just want to confirm, when we address the pay equity issue, that you stated we're using 3%, which really isn't tied directly to cost of living, to adjust the salary schedules, because that directly addresses the pay equity issue for majority of the positions, whereas if we don't give the 3%, we...
The 3% has to do with market, not pay equity. So
Right.
the salary schedule, the recommendation was to adjust the salary schedule itself by that 3.02 CPIU in order to try to keep it within market rates going forward so that we don't get 5 years down the road and find ourselves in a similar position again.
So if the council were to consider not doing that 3%, we would be behind 3%.
Right, the grid would be behind the market a little bit, but it wouldn't be a pay equity issue.
Okay, thank you.
Seth?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna throw this out there as like maybe a potential option. It seems like we still have some discussion to do on this whole plan as is. And I like the suggestion from Tom about potentially, reanalyzing the rubric. I do agree with Byron on some comments about, feeling like we were being led. I was originally against having another attorney because I felt like as a task force, we weren't in the wrong necessarily. So I'm just curious if it's, moving forward just in, to get the ball rolling at least, if we made the fixes to pay equity and then potentially just, added a retroactive COLA right now or, this coming week. And then we go back to the drawing board on some of these issues that everyone's brought up, which I think are valid. That's just an idea.
Were you making that as a motion right now, Seth?
Yeah, I can make that as a motion.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Can you repeat that motion?
Yeah, my suggestion, just again, it's not necessarily gonna fix the issue. It's kind of a Band-Aid depending on how I look at it, but fix the pay equity issues that we have discussed and offer a retroactive COLA for this year, and then go back to the drawing board on some of these items.
To flesh that out a little further, did you want to say what the COLA would be so it's a little, or no?
I guess just whatever the CPI would be for I guess last year.
Would that be the CPIU from October of '24, which would be the 3.02% that we've been using?
Yeah, we don't have this. We don't have this year's, right?
No, the way city policy reads is the annual increase, you take a look at the CPIU from the previous October. So that's why
Okay.
we use that number.
Yeah.
So the 3.02? Okay, yeah. Joel?
Well, I just had a question for Seth. So on the pay equity, you're talking about those 8 positions? Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay. I don't know what the dollar figure was. It was like, what, 30,000?
It's approximately
$37,000.
37,000.
Yeah.
So I believe the motion that does not currently have a second is to address the pay equity plus a retroactive COLA of 3.02. And continue on the effort to fix the rest. And now we have a second. And do people need that motion repeated, or Is it clear? Thumbs up if that's a clear motion. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Any last discussion before we have a vote on this? All right, then I will take a roll call on the motion to address pay equity plus COLA 3.02, retroactive COLA 3.02, and to continue and I'm fine. Okay, and to continue working on the issue. I will begin with Seth. How do you vote?
Yes.
Eric?
Just want to make clear that it is just for those 7 for now, or the 8.
8, correct?
Yes, our understanding from the motion, it's the ones that have immediate pay equity issues. It's the 3% retro COLA, and then it's to continue to further explore the pay equity and salary structures that we're dealing with here, and that we would move this forward for Wednesday night for you to take action on.
So we don't really technically need a motion right now, do we?
Well,
Or
we're voting on
a
that
vote.
motion if we're going to address the pay equity and have a retroactive COLA and continue working on the program.
You're not technically taking formal action on this.
Yeah, it'll be
Formal action
Wednesday
would have to
night, yeah.
occur Wednesday night. We'd have it as a council action item with the retro and with the pay equity issue on the approximately 8 positions.
Okay, thank you for making that clear. Yes.
Kathleen?
No.
Rob?
Yes.
Rick?
I feel this kicks the can down the road. No.
Yes. I'm sorry, can we get the detailed information of the 7 or 8 for Wednesday before Wednesday?
Well, let's continue on with the roll call and then we can add. Joel?
Appreciate you, Valerie. You keep me in check. So the motion remains silent on annual leave cap, on holidays and those things, which we could maybe address in Wednesday's meeting. But so I'll go ahead and vote yes at this time.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2. And so the motion passes, and do you have clear direction?
I do. Stephanie has a clarification comment, though.
No on the information about the individuals. That would be personnel information and not appropriate for a public meeting. I can give you generic numbers about the X number of positions and what the cost is, but if you need additional detailed information, maybe we can talk in advance.
Okay, or even just, it could be a memo coming out to us, like it doesn't have to be.
I will
at the
provide you with
meeting.
whatever information would be appropriate.
Thank you.
To answer one of the questions previously, so 2026, we're at 69% for the general fund.
All right, thank you, council. And now I think things have changed a bit. It looks like we are moving on to agenda review. Agenda review and then executive session. So any items for agenda review? I do have one item for agenda review. I'll just begin this. I read that Ashland has passed an ordinance that is going to help them remove repeat offenders from areas in their city, and that they took a long time to go over and do this, and they made sure that they were within legal bounds of doing this. And what I wanted to suggest, and so I want to propose putting this on the agenda, is for us to explore ways to do something similar as to what Ashland has done, so that the city would have a little bit more ability to remove problem repeat offenders from different areas of the city, as we saw. So If other counselors, or I guess it would be 2 other counselors were interested in doing that, we could put that on the back of the agenda and direct staff to look at putting that together.
Victoria? So, in my opinion, that'd be a waste of time until we have our discussion about the municipal court, and more importantly, the adjunct to that, we made a specific request that we got a report as to what actually are the pinch points in our criminal justice system. What does our DA have to say? What does our sheriff have to say? And we had decided we were going to bring that up in a future meeting. And then if you actually went back and listened, I provided the links to the Public Safety Advisory Committee in August when the sheriff spoke, and he did touch on that subject. And also the DA spoke in the September meeting of the Public Safety Advisory Committee. He also touched on that subject. So there's a lot to be considered there, and we already have that, I believe, on our agenda in the future to discuss it. So your thoughts today, I think, are premature until we've heard back on all the restricting potential factors that may not make that practical for here. I'm not sure what the Jackson County jail situation is like.
This
I'm not
was,
sure what the Jackson County DA situation
a
is like.
city, the city of Ashland. But, oh, thank you, Rob. I really appreciate
But the point is that, I believe I had the floor.
items.
Thank you. I believe I had the floor. Thank you. But the point is that we don't know what the Jackson County jail situation or what the jail situation is there completely. Do they have a city jail in Ashland? I don't believe so. But the DA over there and the sheriff's situation over there could be different than here. We're going to find that out in a future meeting.
So would there be any other counselors who might be interested in putting that on the back of the, to look at this, to add an ordinance like this, understanding that as Rob pointed out, that this does involve the presence of a municipal court, but I still would love to explore that. So I saw one counselor who might be interested in, and 2, so yes.
Maybe to help with this discussion, what we can do, and I think what Council President may be referring to is what's defined as exclusionary zones. Yes. And so what we could do is maybe start with is we can draft a memo for your review. And then once you've digested that information, maybe you can provide us with additional information through a future agenda setting meeting after you've had an opportunity to review what an exclusionary zone is and how it may apply in Grants Pass.
That would be, that would be acceptable. Thank you. Any other items for agenda? I see Eric and then Joel.
Yeah, so the meeting that Rob was referring to when the district attorney came in and spoke at the Public Safety Budget Advisory Committee, I forget the exact title of it, but they were talking about SB 48. And I think it would be very important to bring that to the floor, have a discussion about that, perhaps bring and speak about SB 48 and the various laws that we have restricting the city from HB 3115 to SB 48, all of the things that are creating the complications that we have in our city. And I think it was very important that that was brought forward at that meeting. I believe Rob sent out a voice recording of the entire meeting. I think that's important to have the public hear all of that information from the DA. So just wanted to see how we can work that in. It's vital.
So as a part of that memo, can we have SB 48 information?
We can address that as either work it into that memo or as a separate memo, provide you additional information so you're all on the same page with SB 48.
I mean, for like the public to hear, and perhaps we can talk about that.
Yeah, so after a memo, I think then that could be something that we could bring forward to a workshop or.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. And I believe I had Joel and then Indra.
One of the things that got taken off of next Wednesday's workshop appropriately was the caretaker's cottage, because there were some things that needed to be worked out between staff. One of them being the conflict or are there ways around having both with the parks storage area down there and the caretaker's cottage renovation, and then the other is parking? But we need to bring it back after they've met and have done their good staff work as usual. So I don't know how soon we can do that, but we did have that request for interest. I call it a request for proposal, but it was a request for interest that we need to act on in a timely manner. So I don't know how soon that can happen and come back to us.
Yes, Counselor. We've already reached out to the applicant for the RFI and set up a meeting for next week. So hopefully the outcomes of that will result in being able to bring it back pretty soon after that meeting. So we just have some of those, as you pointed out, some logistical issues to work out. So.
Yeah. As always, there's nothing easy. So are we looking at November sometime then?
I do think that we would be able to bring it back in November, yeah.
Okay. We can cover it at our agenda meetings. Okay.
So, good? Okay, good. Indra?
So the municipal court is scheduled for December 15th workshop, and I think that is, I'm sure, a good place, Aaron, to talk about all these issues and bring up, Eric, what you said for the public to know. I think that would come up. And then I guess my question on the Public Safety Task Force, those are public meetings, recordings. Are they posted on our websites for public to view?
That's correct.
So they can go out there and view any of those links. Yeah, thank you.
Other agenda items? All right, I believe then we are going to once again adjourn this session and move back into executive session.
Council President, we have a bike motion. It should be on the dais for you.
Oh, okay, I thought that had been moved forward. Okay, thank you. Sure.
All right, so council, you've got Bikeways and Walkways Committee motions. One motion, the first is request that the Grants Pass Parks Department install kiosks at Highland Loop and Crescent Trailheads on Dollar Mountain for information purposes. The call to action would be the Parks Department is currently installing a kiosk at Highland Loop. It is requested to install an additional one at Crescent Trailhead. And then the second motion is to improve connectivity between Crescent and Highland Loop trailheads for Dollar Mountain and the B Street jumps. Call to action would be remove parking from Highland Avenue, which is a major arterial, and install bike lanes and stripings in Sharrows, as well as installing striping and Sharrows on Northwest Woodbrook Drive. These improvements will enhance safe routes to schools as well as recreational and tourism use. Those are the two motions they're wanting council to consider.
Do we have dollar figures attached to these motions?
Hi, Council. My name is Wade Elliott. I'm the liaison for city staff on the Bikeways Walkways Committee. No, we haven't looked at it that close. If you just eliminate parking and stripe it, you're probably looking at less than $100,000. Striping is relatively inexpensive. Neither of these motions appear to require any kind of reconstruction, which is where the real money's at, but we haven't looked at it that close. The kiosks, they are putting in, I think 2 of them as part of the Dollar Mountain project. We'd be adding another one at Crescent parking lot, and my understanding is those aren't too expensive. I think $5,000, $10,000, somewhere in there.
So it's, if my math was correct, that would add up to about $120,000 or so.
That's very rough, yep. Depends how much green paint you put in there. Surprisingly, just funny how some things cost a lot. The green paint you see in the at the intersections in bike lanes is horrendously expensive. So I kind of stopped doing it, like really expensive. So.
Thank you so much. Rob, and then Indra.
Yeah. To me, the kiosk makes sense because you're going to have theoretically tourists that need information when on the mountain. But as far as and the bike lanes also make sense to me, really simple, no-brainer. But the one that to me requires a little bit of more understanding by the council is the concept of removing parking on Highland. And we need to, I believe anyway, we need to have a study that would, give council an idea of how the parking is utilized now, how much parking is utilized along Highland now, and then you already know what a community survey is going to say of the property owners. They're going to say, you know, hell no, you know, keep our parking. But I'd like to know how much parking is actually being used on Highland. I can actually answer that question because I ride that route every single day, but the rest of the council needs to know how much parking is used on Highland before we would make a major move like that. So if we do bring this back, that would be something that we would need from staff, is how much parking is utilized. Yep.
All right, Indra, and then I think I may have seen Seth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the kiosks I'm okay with. The removing parking along Highland, I'm not okay with. I also go that route and did it for years to school with my children. It's a residential neighborhood all along there. Part of it's parking and a bike lane across from the school. Then you have no bike lane. Then there's another. The other side has a bike lane all the way through. So I don't think. Do you do any kind of talking to the residents to see what they would like to do, or no?
We would, if you guys wanted to move forward with this, we would definitely go do a survey. You know, Councilor Pell is correct. If we went out there and surveyed them, 99 out of 100 would say no, which is why we're in front of you guys. That's not something that staff can do administratively, is just remove all of that parking. So if that's something you guys want to look at, we'd look at it closer and reach out to the public.
Okay. Yeah, I would not be for that, removing all the parking for a bike lane.
All right, Seth, and then Kathleen.
I was just going to say I agree with that, yeah.
All right, Kathleen.
So I was curious, what does a kiosk entail besides literature? Is
Mostly
that part of the bike repair stuff?
Well, actually, interestingly, I had a call while I was in here. They're putting up the last bike repair station up at the new Highland parking lot, which I think they're doing and they're doing a ribbon cutting on November 1st. So anyways, the repair station will be up then, but the kiosks will have general information, kind of like the ones you'd see at like Cathedral Hills, and then city staff can recirculate it. The context for the kiosks from the Bikeways Committee is that they are concerned with the different classes of e-bike and what can be used on what trails. And so that would be a future discussion likely for city council, as well as, you know, code enforcement, where that fits in and what classes are used where. But then if, you know, council said you guys can't use class 3 up on Dollar Mountain or whatever it is you guys decided, then you could post those things in those kiosks.
Joel, and then Rick.
Yeah, just a quick suggestion too. We can make it a fire regulations. We can post that on the kiosk. Fireworks ban, things like that. Yep. So I wouldn't view it just as a bicycle thing. It's it serves multifunctional use, and then we need to use it that way.
Rick.
I was wondering on Highland, instead of the bike lanes per se, if you could use existing sidewalks, and if the terrain and property were there, could you convert and install a multimodal path instead?
Certainly, if that would be a much higher cost option, but yes, we could go out there and acquire property on one or both sides of the road to widen out one of those facilities. The side that has the schools on it is pretty steep, falls off pretty quickly, so that would be expensive. We're talking about retaining walls and things to expand that direction. But yeah, so absolutely an option. We can expand the roadway footprint.
Thank you.
It sounds to me like a lot more information might be needed for council to move forward. If I'm correct about that, I might make a motion to move this to a future workshop for more information. Okay, I see a second. So I'll start with roll call, and I'll start with Joel.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
All right, so we have 5 and 2, so the motion passes. So we'll move this to a future
Future workshop for discussion, yes.
For discussion, thank you.
I had some questions before you cut me off. Can I ask them of Josh?
Didn't realize I cut you off.
So would the money for the kiosk come out of URA or general? Where does that money come from for the kiosk?
Well, it's a good question. I think it could come from a lot of different sources. URA could be a good one. It's tourism related, so we could potentially use some of those dollars. Anything that we use to build the Dollar Mountain Trail system could be used. Also, I think you could use gas tax because it's transportation related infrastructure, so it could come from a myriad of locations.
Okay,
Which
and
we haven't put a lot of discussion into. I don't know where yet. But.
okay, and then just a FYI for council, part of that does not have sidewalks on Highland, just FYI.
All right, so I believe staff has good direction.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will be adjourning this session, and we will be moving once again into executive session. And so I will go ahead and read that again if I would have not lost my place. The council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing those subjects previously noticed for this executive session. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660 and more specifically under the subsections of that statute which have been publicly noticed. Representatives of the news media are designated and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room.